Have you ever held cash from another country and wondered why it feels so different? Not the texture or the color, but the weight it carries, the power behind it. 100 units of one currency might buy you a meal. 100 units of another might buy you a house. It's the same concept, money, but the reality couldn't be more different. I'm Ethan, and for the past several months, I've been diving deep into the mechanics of global currencies. Not to become a day trader or to make investment predictions, but because I genuinely wanted to understand what makes one country's money worth more than another's. Today, we're breaking down the forces that shape currency values and why those values never stop shifting. Let me introduce you to Ryan. Ryan's an average guy from the US. He uses dollars every single day, buying coffee, paying rent, saving for the future. Money is just money to him. Then, Ryan books a trip to Germany. At the airport exchange counter, he hands over $100. The teller gives him back about 92 euros. Wait, Ryan thinks, why not 100 euros? Why less? A few months later, Ryan visits Vietnam. This time, his $100 become 2.5 million dong. 2.5 million. Ryan's holding the same American money he started with, but in one place it shrinks, and in another it explodes into astronomical numbers. What determines this? Here's where we need to rewind the clock. Money hasn't always been this abstract concept we use today. For centuries, it was anchored to something real and tangible, precious metals, especially gold. This was the gold standard era. When your currency operated on a gold standard, every dollar or pound or franc represented a promise, a specific quantity of gold sitting in a government vault. You couldn't just manufacture money out of thin air. Want more currency in circulation? You'd better have more gold to back it up. This created predictable exchange rates because everyone's money was ultimately measured against the same thing. But here's the problem. Economies started growing faster than gold reserves. International trade became more complex. Wars required massive spending. The gold standard became a cage. By the early 1970s, that cage was unlocked for good. We entered the age of fiat currency. Fiat money isn't backed by gold bars or silver coins or anything you can touch. It has value for one reason, because a government says it does, and because people believe it. That second part, that's the entire game. The moment a currency stops being backed by something physical, its worth becomes a reflection of collective confidence. And confidence fluctuates based on one fundamental economic principle: supply and demand. When demand for a currency is high, when people around the world want to hold it, invest with it, trade in it, its value rises. When demand drops because people lose faith, the value plummets. This is why currencies from stable, well-managed economies tend to be strong, and why currencies from chaotic or mismanaged economies can become worthless paper. One of the biggest threats to currency value is inflation. Think of inflation this way. Imagine your economy is like a pizza, and your currency is the number of slices you cut it into. If you've got 8 slices and 8 people, everyone gets a fair share. But what happens if you suddenly cut that same pizza into 16 slices? Each slice is now worth half as much pizza. That's inflation. When governments print too much money relative to available goods and services, each unit of that money buys you less. Let's say $10 gets you 2 sandwiches today. Fast forward a couple years with high inflation, and that same $10 only gets you 1 sandwich. Your cash didn't vanish. Its purchasing power did. And when purchasing power drops, people panic. They either spend their money immediately before it loses more value, or they convert it into something more stable: foreign currency, gold, real estate. And as people abandon a currency, demand collapses, and so does its value. Zimbabwe is perhaps the most shocking example of currency collapse in modern history. In the 1980s, the Zimbabwean dollar was actually stronger than the US dollar. That's not a typo. But then came decades of political turmoil, corruption, mismanagement, and the printing presses running non-stop to cover government debts. Inflation didn't just rise, it went parabolic. Money became meaningless. People would carry wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread. Prices would change between entering a store and reaching the checkout. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its own currency entirely and started using foreign money instead. That's what happens when trust evaporates completely. Now let's talk about interest rates, because they're one of the most powerful tools in the currency game. Interest rates represent the cost of borrowing money, and they're controlled by central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the US or the European Central Bank. Here's how they influence currency value. When a country raises its interest rates, it offers better returns on investments. To get those returns, foreign investors need to buy that country's currency first. More buyers equals more demand equals stronger currency. Higher interest rates make borrowing expensive. Businesses take fewer loans. People postpone buying homes. Economic growth can slow down. So central banks are constantly walking a tightrope, adjusting rates to control inflation without strangling growth. Money flows towards safety. Investors don't just chase profits, they chase predictability. They want stable governments, clear legal systems, and economies that aren't going to implode overnight. When China began opening its economy to foreign investment in the late 70s and early 80s, global corporations flooded in. To operate there, they needed Chinese yuan. Demand for the yuan surged. On the flip side, when a country experiences political upheaval, frequent policy changes, or economic instability, investors flee. And when investors leave, they take their money with them. Demand for that country's currency drops and its value weakens. International trade plays a massive role in currency strength. When a country exports goods, foreign buyers need that country's currency to complete the purchase. Japan sells cars globally. Buyers need yen. Australia ships iron ore. Buyers need Australian dollars. Countries with strong export sectors tend to have stronger currencies because of this constant international demand. The US dollar has a special advantage here that's worth noting. For decades, global oil transactions have been conducted primarily in US dollars. Since virtually every nation needs oil, they also need dollars on hand. This system, often called the petrodollar, has been a major factor in the dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency. Now, some countries take a different approach entirely. Instead of letting their currency float freely in the market, they peg it to another, more stable currency. Brunei pegs its dollar to Singapore's at exactly 1-to-1. Belize pegs its dollar to the US dollar at a fixed 2-to-1 rate. This creates predictability. Businesses and tourists know exactly what to expect. But there's a trade-off. You surrender monetary independence. If the currency you're pegged to weakens, yours weakens automatically. If it strengthens, you follow along whether you like it or not. At some point, you've probably thought, why don't we just use one global currency and eliminate all this complexity? It seems logical. No more exchange fees, no more conversion confusion, simpler international trade. But the euro experiment shows us why it's not that simple. European countries share the euro, but they don't share identical economic conditions. Now, imagine scaling that up to the entire planet. A crisis in one region would immediately impact everyone, with no escape valves. Here's something that might surprise you. Countries don't always want the strongest possible currency. It depends on their economic strategy. If you're an import-heavy nation, a strong currency is great. It makes foreign goods cheaper to buy. But if you're an export-heavy nation, a weaker currency can actually help. Your products become more affordable to international buyers, making you more competitive in global markets. That's why currency management is always about balance, not just maximizing strength. So why do different currencies have different values? Because currency value is a reflection of trust, economic stability, policy decisions, trade dynamics, and collective human psychology, all interacting simultaneously. Your dollar doesn't convert to the same amount everywhere because each nation's money tells a different story about its economy, its stability, and its place in the global system. Thanks for watching.